let me explain the concept of market freedom in Islam as compared to a capitalist system. In doing this comparison, we will use 4 important criteria to see the differences. The first, in terms of the governing law. Number 2, in terms of the role of states in each system. And number 3, in terms of the behavior of the economic agents. And then lastly, in terms of the ethical, moral aspects of the system. Let's start with the first one. In terms of the governing law in an Islamic economic system, there are 2 sets of law governing the system. The first one is the divine law. The Sharia law set the framework within which the system must be operationalized. And then the second set of law is the man-made law. In contrast, in capitalist system, it is only subject to man-made law. And here we can freedom in Islam is more constrained in this aspect because there are 2 sets of law. Example, like you take the divine law, the prohibition of riba or the prohibition of gambling. These are 2 features that you can find all Islamic economists or Muslim scholars would agree. These 2 are prohibited. Therefore, we cannot have that in the system. And at the same time, citizens must also obey the man-made law. In Malaysia, for example, the operation of the Islamic banking system is subject to IFSA 2013. So these 2 sets of law set the framework for the system to be supervised, and all behaviors are subject to following this law. In capitalist system, on the other hand, it is only subject to follow the man-made law. Some country like United States may legalize something like gambling in Las Vegas, become a big industry. There is no divine law governing the system. That's number 1. Number 2, in terms of role of state. In Islam, we look at the function of states as an integrated part of the system. State or government is required to put in place the Islamic framework, at least in 3 important aspects. Number 1, to put in place the Islamic law of the game, so that the system recognize the divine law. And then number 2, it is also important for the state to provide a good environment for the economic agents, Islamic men. So we need a conducive environment for Islamic men to exist, right? To practice Islam for the Muslim, and the non-Muslim, they can practice their own religion, but they must respect Islam as a religion, Islam as a system, and within that, both sides can live in harmony. Number 3, states also is required to ensure justice and fairness, al-adl wal-ihsan, to prevail in the system. The point here is state or government is an integrated part. There's a clear recognition. In contrast, we look at the idea of state or government in a free market system or government to ensure sovereignty, to put law and order in place, and then to provide public goods. Other than that, anytime there is a government coming into the system in economics like tax, subsidy, free market economists would present the idea of market disturbance or intervention by government, leading to inefficiency into the market. Alright, so government, in other words, is not really welcome in the system. Let's go to the third point. We talk about economic agents. When we say market, we can say they are consumers, they are producers. Consumer creates demand, producer creates supply. So demand and supply in Islam is subject to Islamic rules of the game. consumer, for example, must only consume halal or lawful products, halalan tayyibah. They also must perform their activities within the ethical value of Islam, respecting one another, for example, in transactions, payment of debt on time. Now, what about economic agents in the capitalist system? We can say the idea of freedom in a capitalist system is only constrained by two important points. Consumers, producers can still do their activities, but it must be legal. And then number two, freedom also is constrained by the amount of resources consumers or producers have at their disposal. As consumer, for example, you may want to have so many things in your life to enjoy, to maximize your utility. Nevertheless, it depends on how deep is your pocket. These are the constraints faced by consumers in a capitalist system. More freedom as compared to Islam, because Islam has put certain constraints like the prohibition of gambling or drinking alcohol. But from Islamic perspective, these are not really constrained. Constrained in terms of that we cannot consume. However, there is a wisdom behind the restriction. It is to ensure harmony in life, especially in ensuring good context between man and his creator, hablu minallah. And then number two, to ensure good contact between man and man, hablu minan nas. And then number three, to ensure good contact with the environments, with the alam. Alright, so that's a reason where good Muslims basically would accept this as something good for them. The last point, number 4, is on a moral, ethical context of market. In Islam, when we say value, we have higher value. This is our relationship with the Creator, Allah Ta'ala, spiritual value, if you like. So, obeying the divine law is not just good materially, but it is also have a better meaning to the spiritual side of human life. When we, as a consumer, don't consume alcohol, don't involve in gambling or interest-based transactions, we are not just doing activities or avoiding activities harmful to us as an individual or to the society, but these acts are actually following the command of the Creator. Again, when we say market freedom in Islam, freedom within value of Islamic teachings, that's important. Cheating in doing transactions, bribery, not fulfilling contract obligations. In many parts of the world, these examples are considered to be illegal. More than that, in Islam, this is considered to be against the true teaching of Islam. Therefore, not just the person can be charged in the court, he or she is considered to be sinful for performing such illegal behavior or activities. Now, if we look at capitalist idea of values or ethics, freedom can be applied in this case because over the years, the idea of what is right and wrong in many societies now, when the society no longer put religion as the higher authority, the idea of right and wrong become something subjective. It may change over time. How value can change? 3 important points. Number 1, through democracy, people can voice their disagreement with certain law. We see now movement asking state to recognize abortion or same-sex marriage. These are some examples where you go to the past history, such activities could be condemned, but over the years, people may change their perspective on the issue. That's number 1, through democratic voice, referendum. Number two, through scientific findings. If science can prove or disprove something, then certain thing can be recognized or rejected. Science, therefore, in a secular society in particular, is a very important tool to understand what is right and wrong. And then number three, commercialization or market itself is powerful enough to change perspective, the idea of right and wrong. Gambling, all religion consider this to be a sinful and wrong act, but because of commercialization, the potential to make huge profit, many countries would legalize this. If you take religion in this context, like in Islam, the divine law forever will consider gambling to be prohibited. Therefore, from these 4 points I have discussed earlier, we can see now that in Islam, when we say market freedom or economic freedom, the freedom is within the context of the teaching of Islam. As a Muslim myself, I don't see this to be constraint that limit my freedom in this world. Rather, as we practice Islam more, we can see the wisdom, we can see the beauty of the religion itself. That's all for this time. See you again. Assalamualaikum.